Hi, I'm Darren Sugiyama. I'm a 12-time author with my books being distributed in 14 different countries, in addition to the United States. One of them is Premium Finance Life Insurance, the key to effective estate tax planning. Most people know that that's really my area of specialty. I am definitely the most transparent premium financing intermediary in the life insurance industry. And recently, I just put out this book, IUL For Dummies and Aspiring Know-It-Alls. In this book, I really break down the inner workings of an IUL, how these floors and caps are created, how the multiplier bonuses are created, and really go through how to mitigate certain risks inside that type of product. I'm going to read the first two chapters of this book just to give you kind of a flavor of the content that we will discuss. So I hope you enjoy. Chapter 1, Dummies. Most life insurance agents are dummies. In today's hypersensitive environment, I'm sure the statement will offend a lot of people, but that doesn't mean it's not true. It is absolutely true. Any dummy can take an online course, pass a very simple exam, and bingo, they're a licensed insurance agent. In the state of California where I live, the passing score on this licensing exam is only 60%. So if a dummy gets a D- grade on their exam, they become licensed by the state of California to give financial advice when it comes to life insurance. Talk about a low barrier to entry. In addition, the life insurance industry does a terrible job of educating insurance agents how life insurance products actually work in real-world scenarios, good, bad, and ugly. I've even heard some life insurance training programs encourage agents to KISS, an acronym for Keep It Simple, Stupid. Now, though I understand that many clients that buy life insurance are neither mathematical geniuses nor financial gurus, I believe that clients deserve the right to fully understand what they're buying. Now, consumer protection should be rooted in client education, and if licensed professionals are supposed to be giving clients financial advice as it pertains to life insurance, shouldn't they be experts in the products that they're recommending? Of course they should, but they are not. Most of them are product dummies. And to make matters even worse, there is a high level of righteous indignation that many life insurance agents embody. Some are hardcore IUL enthusiasts, despite their veneer understanding of how the IUL product chassis is actually constructed. Now, on the other side of the aisle are the IUL haters that say IULs are too risky. These anti-IUL zealots are equally as ignorant. The same could be said about whole life enthusiasts and haters, term insurance enthusiasts and haters, and variable universal life enthusiasts and haters. The truth of the matter is that each one of these life insurance product categories is suitable for a very specific client demographic. But the reality is, most clients do not own the appropriate life insurance product, largely because it was sold to them by a life insurance agent that didn't truly understand the product they sold. Imagine if there was a world where doctors only had to take a 52-hour online course and score a D- on their licensing exam in order to get a medical license. Now imagine this so-called doctor prescribing drugs to their patients without truly understanding the potential benefits and risks of certain pharmaceuticals. That would be crazy. But this is the reality that exists in the world of life insurance right now. A bunch of dummies selling insurance products they don't understand to unsuspecting clients. Clients who are also dummies when it comes to life insurance planning. This harsh reality is the reason why I wrote this book. IUL For Dummies is the 12th book I've authored in my career, with my works being distributed in 14 different countries, in addition to the United States. One of my books, Premium Finance Life Insurance, The Key to Effective Estate Tax Planning, reviews a very sophisticated estate tax planning strategy called premium financing. This is a life insurance strategy oftentimes used by clients whose net worth is over $25 million, in which they borrow seven-figure premiums from a bank, similar to buying real estate using a mortgage loan. In that book, I extensively review a life insurance product called Index Universal Life, or IUL. And though the targeted audience for that book is the uber wealthy, my articulation of how IULs actually work could certainly be applied to smaller non-financed policies, hence the impetus to release this book, IUL For Dummies. Many of the chapters in this book are taken right out of my Premium Finance Life Insurance book. I've removed the chapters and the content that only talk about the financing of premiums, so this book that you're reading now, IUL for Dummies, focuses on a non-financed version of the same IUL product. Now, perhaps you're wondering what gives me the authority to talk so bluntly and somewhat harshly about these issues. I realize that calling someone a dummy can certainly come off as being arrogant and condescending. Well, to be clear, my intention is not to bash other insurance professionals, nor to bash the intellect and financial sophistication of insurance clients. Rather, my true intention is to be the beacon of truth in this industry and teach both advisors and clients how IULs actually work in real-world scenarios. I recently heard the head of a large life insurance organization say, that Sugiyama guy, he won't even sugarcoat a cookie. This cracked me up. However, it is absolutely true. In today's world that promotes over political correctness, I have built a reputation in this industry as being a disruptor, a truth teller, and a man of honor that is not afraid to transparently show people the indisputable math, the actual truth, when it comes to certain life insurance product designs. If you'd like to learn more about my professional background and credentials, the final chapter of this book will explain my journey in this industry and why I have the audacity to call some people dummies. Now, before we dig into the details of an IUL, I hope you understand that the title of this book and the title of this first chapter is a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I hope you have enough sense of self-deprecating humor to realize this. Now, the reality is, unless you're a product technician and a math nerd like I am, you are in fact a dummy in this particular area, the area of life insurance product design. And if you are an aspiring know-it-all, this book will teach you practically everything you need to know about an IUL. All jesting aside, the remaining contents of this book are very serious and are intended to educate and deepen your understanding of how, when, and why using an IUL for your family's estate plan, as well as your own retirement, can be so valuable. Once you understand the how/why/when components of this financial instrument, you'll gain a much greater level of confidence when making financial decisions regarding life insurance that will impact you and your family. Now, if you're a client that's considering using IUL as a retirement planning tool, or if you're a financial advisor, CPA, estate planning attorney, or a life insurance agent that wants to gain a deeper understanding of how an IUL actually works, this is the right book for you. In the next chapter, we'll begin by discussing the preferential tax treatment that IULs receive and why wealthy people love life insurance. Chapter 2, Wealthy People. Wealthy people love life insurance, and for good reason. The three most common ways wealthy people use life insurance policies are to, 1, provide liquidity to fund lifestyle expenses for their family in the event of a premature death, 2, generate a tax-free supplemental retirement income, and 3, pay the 40% in estate taxes due when their wealth is transferred to the next generation, assuming their net worth would warrant this taxation. The wealthy people typically want a conservative alternative to a taxable bonds portfolio, and the 0% floor of an IUL provides that conservative alternative. In addition, the tax-free cash value accumulation inside a life insurance policy is also very appealing to wealthy people. But the appeal doesn't stop there. They also like the fact that the retirement income drawdowns from the policy can be tax-free as well. I have an entire chapter in this book devoted to explaining the different ways to take these tax-free income drawdowns. That's Chapter 5, Policy Drawdowns. Now, this benefit can even be enjoyed by non-wealthy people that own an IUL. In addition, when a wealthy individual passes away, their assets can be passed on to their surviving spouse without tax consequence. However, once their surviving spouse passes away and their wealth is transferred to the next generation, their heirs may incur a substantial tax liability in the form of estate taxes, which are currently 40%, depending on the estate's value at such time, and depending on the estate tax exemption limit at such time. The IRS allows a certain amount of their net worth to be transferred to the next generation, tax-free, up until a certain dollar amount, known as the estate tax exemption limit. This exemption has increased each year since 2017. Now, below, we see the increases since 2017. 2017, it was $5.49 million per individual or $10.98 million per married couple. In 2018, that exemption limit increased to $11.18 million per person or $22.36 million per married couple. Fast forward all the way up until this year, 2024, the exemption limit is $13.61 million per individual or $27.22 million per married couple. So here's what these numbers really mean. Upon death, a spouse can pass their exemption on to their surviving spouse. However, what many feared regarding the Biden administration's tax agenda came to pass on September 13, 2001, when the House Ways and Means Committee released a tax change proposal in favor of reducing the estate tax exemption limit back down to the $5,000 range per individual in 2026. However, one thing that has remained constant is the favorable tax treatment of life insurance, which is why it continues to be an incredibly valuable estate planning tool. Due to Section 101A of the IRS tax code, the death benefit of a life insurance policy is tax-free, giving policy owners a huge advantage when the policy is owned in an irrevocable life insurance trust, or an ILIT, outside their taxable estate, despite their net worth being far above the thresholds I mentioned earlier. If, however, the client's estate is worth less than the thresholds I mentioned earlier, including the death benefit of the policy can be individually owned inside their estate, and the death benefit is tax-free as well. I will discuss comparing life insurance strategies to non-insurance-based alternatives later in this book. However, it is important to understand that when a person dies, any excess net worth above the estate tax exemption is currently taxed at a rate of 40% when it's transferred to the next generation. This creates a substantial tax liability for Generation 2. To clarify how this works, when one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse does not incur any estate tax liability. However, when the second spouse dies and the estate is transferred to the next generation, estate taxes are incurred by the inheriting generation. As an example, if the surviving spouse is worth $100 million above the exemption limit, at the time of their passing, the inheriting generation will owe $40 million in estate taxes, which is 40% of the $100 million. This inheriting generation is only given 9 months from the time of their surviving parent's death to file and pay the estate taxes due, which is not much lead time by any means. If the estate value is comprised of illiquid assets, like for example, real estate, a company, jewelry, art, automobile collection, etc., the estate tax is still due on the value of these assets nonetheless, which often results in a necessary fire sale of such assets to come up with the funds required to pay the estate taxes. This can be both financially and emotionally draining for all parties involved. Life insurance is an extremely efficient tool in planning for the estate tax liability that the next generation will incur because it removes the need to liquidate the estate's illiquid assets within this 9-month period. If the policy is owned by an irrevocable life insurance trust, which is outside the taxable estate, the death benefit will pay out tax-free to the ILIT and is not subject to estate taxes. The ILIT can then pay the estate taxes due once the death benefit is issued. This is a much easier process to manage than a desperate fire sale of illiquid assets just to come up with the cash needed to pay the estate taxes. When it comes to estate tax planning, wealthy clients essentially have two options. They can either, one, do nothing and give away 40% of their wealth to the government in the form of estate taxes, or two, use life insurance to pay the estate taxes for them. Making the decision to buy life insurance should be based on one simple mathematical equation. If the money you would have spent on life insurance can be invested in an alternative asset, and that asset value after 40% estate taxes becomes greater than the tax-free death benefit of the life insurance policy, then you should not buy the life insurance policy. But if 60% of that alternative asset value is less valuable than the net death benefit, well, then you should buy the life insurance. It really is that simple. There is certainly an emotionally driven population that feels like they are leaving enough assets behind for Generation 2 and don't feel the need to purchase life insurance. Perhaps they've even said, hey, no one ever left me an inheritance. My kids are lucky to get whatever I leave them. Well, the reality is, wealthy parents are either going to leave the money to their kids, a charity, or Uncle Sam. Even if they don't want to make their kids overly wealthy, I have yet to meet a wealthy individual that prefers the IRS over their favorite charity. The problem that many wealthy families face is that if the majority of the estate's value is not liquid, for example, real estate value, business valuation, etc., Generation 2 would have to sell the estate's assets to come up with the cash to pay the estate taxes due. Again, they only have 9 months to make this payment. The IRS does, however, have an option to finance the estate taxes due. According to IRC Section 6166, Generation 2 may defer payment of estate taxes if 35% or more of the deceased person's estate is a closely held business. Generation 2 can pay interest only in years 1 through 5 on the estate taxes due. Then they can pay principal plus interest amortized over years 6 through 15. If Generation 2 defaults on this IRS loan, the IRS can seize and sell the asset. An advisor once told me about one of his clients, wherein the estate was worth $114 million at the time of the second parent's death in 2006. At that time, the estate tax exemption for a married couple was only $4 million, instead of the current $27.22 million per couple in 2024. And the estate tax rate was 46% instead of the current 40%. The family's business was in the real estate industry. Generation 2 elected the 6166 option because they didn't have the liquidity to pay the $50 million in estate taxes due. 2 years later, in 2008, the estate/business value plummeted from $114 million to only $54 million. And Generation 2's income plummeted as well, and they defaulted on the 6166 loan. The IRS seized the estate's assets and sold them for their new fair market value of $54 million. However, this reduction in estate valuation did not affect the $50 million in estate taxes still due. You see, the estate taxes were calculated based on the value of the estate at the time of death, regardless of the plummeted value 2 years later. Ultimately, Generation 2 was left with only $4 million after they inherited a $114 million estate from their parents. In this scenario, had there been a $50 million life insurance policy in an ILIT, or an irrevocable life insurance trust, outside the taxable estate, to pay the future estate tax value, Generation 2 could have inherited the entire estate, undiluted by estate taxes. Over time, the family's real estate values and business valuation would have recovered. In addition, when wealthy parents pass away, it can drive huge wedges between siblings if the estate plan is not well designed and or clearly delineated. When siblings argue over who gets to keep certain sentimental assets, like the family home and the family business, versus which assets need to be sold in order to pay the estate taxes, it can absolutely destroy a family. This is why providing liquidity in their time of need is so important. And typically, life insurance, specifically premium finance life insurance, is the most prudent and tax-efficient way to provide such liquidity. Though it is clearly important to understand the client's financial position when developing an estate plan, the single most important thing for an advisor to understand is how to identify the difference between what a client says they want today versus how they will feel in the future if their personal financial situation does not meet their aspirations. This can be a challenging truth to uncover, one that takes a tremendous amount of psychological, sociological, and emotional intuitiveness on behalf of the advisor. It also takes a high level of understanding the inter-family relationship dynamics and family governance, or lack thereof. Now, here's an example to illustrate what I mean by this. Now, let's say you have a wealthy family with a taxable estate value of $100 million. When the patriarch and matriarch both pass away, As of 2024, their heirs will owe $40 million in estate taxes within 9 months of their passing. If the majority of the estate value is held in illiquid assets, like for example, real estate, company valuation, etc., the adult kids will be forced to sell assets to come up with the cash to pay the 40% in estate taxes. In this hypothetical example, the eldest son is running the family business and does not want to sell any shares of the business to pay the estate taxes. The family business is his baby. The youngest son is living on the family yacht in Miami, living the playboy lifestyle, and certainly does not want to sell the yacht and the penthouse to pay the estate taxes. The daughter is resentful that she was not chosen to run the family business, and she has a sentimental attachment to the family vacation house in the Hamptons, where they spent their summers growing up, and she doesn't want to sell it to pay the estate taxes. Of course, each respective sibling could care less about the assets their other siblings care about, and these disagreements over which assets to liquidate in order to pay the $40 million in estate taxes can absolutely destroy the relationships between siblings. If there are spouses, children, and grandchildren involved, this can make these family disputes even more volatile. You see, it's not just the financial elements that are important. The emotional and relationship dynamics are also important, perhaps even more important. This is where a properly structured life insurance policy can be such a valuable tool in regards to estate planning and family governance. Assets can be split amongst the surviving siblings based on their preference and emotional attachments, and the life insurance death benefit can take care of the estate taxes due, keeping the peace. When people ask me what I do for a living, I now say, when wealth is transferred from one generation to the next, I make sure the adult kids don't kill each other. This response often leads to some pretty interesting cocktail party discussions without me even trying to solicit my services. You would be amazed that despite how much I try to avoid talking about what I do for a living in social settings, people are fascinated by this topic of interfamily relationship dynamics, especially among uber wealthy families. There are many benefits of using life insurance as both an estate tax planning tool as well as a tax advantaged asset for wealth accumulation and supplemental retirement income. So even if your net worth is not at the level where your heirs would be subject to estate taxes, life insurance can still be a valuable asset for you to own. But in this industry, wherein the explanations of how these insurance-based instruments actually work is opaque at best, one of the biggest criticisms of the life insurance industry is that many of the products lack transparency. And quite frankly, I would have to agree with that accusation. Sort of, right? But not completely. The reality is that many of these life insurance products do not lack transparency in their construction. The lack of transparency is in how their construction is communicated to the client, both from the carriers and the agents. It is a problem I've experienced as a life insurance client back before I got into this line of work, and it is a problem that still exists today. The key is to understand how different types of life insurance policies are built and how they work mechanically. This is the foundation I built my practice on. Everything I do is rooted in education and granular understanding. In this book, I will open up the black box so you can see what's actually inside the box, which will change your perspective from looking through opaque lenses to looking through a high-powered microscope. The strong stance I've taken on opening up this black box has at times felt like I was opening Pandora's box. But as I stated earlier, I am an industry disruptor, a beacon of transparency, and my goal is to teach you the truth about these products, where the risks are, how to mitigate these risks, and to show you the best way to utilize these products in the most effective way possible. If you are not familiar with the details of the Greek mythological story of Pandora's box, indulge me for just a moment to share with you how analogous this story is to indexed universal life insurance. In Greek mythology, Pandora was the first woman on Earth. She was given a box that the gods told her contained special gifts, but she was also told that she was not allowed to open it and see what was inside. Eventually, Pandora could not contain her curiosity, and she opened the box. When she did, all the illnesses and hardships that the gods had hidden in the box started coming out. And she tried to close the box once she saw the evil coming out of it, but in doing so, hope got trapped inside the box. Many people feel the same way about certain life insurance products. They're told that the black box contains all kinds of special gifts, for example, tax-free benefits, 0% floor, etc., but they are told not to open the box and dissect its components at the granular level. In addition, I've even heard advisors say, hey, my clients don't want to know all the details. Personally, I think that statement greatly underestimates the curiosity of high net worth clients. To say that a person worth $100 million doesn't want to understand how an IUL works is an incredibly naive thing to say, and from my own personal experience, a very inaccurate thing to say. So far, I've only talked about why wealthy people love life insurance, but perhaps you're not worth $100 million. What if your net worth is far below this amount? In fact, what if your net worth is less than $1 million and you make less than $100,000 per year? Is an IUL still an effective financial tool you should have in your retirement portfolio? Each person's unique circumstance would dictate my answer to this question. However, ask yourself these questions. Number one, if you were to die unexpectedly early, your family would no longer have your income to pay the bills, mortgage, car payments, etc. Could they maintain their lifestyle and pay for living expenses without your income? If the answer is no, perhaps you need some life insurance coverage. Number two, do you think income taxes are going up or down? If you think taxes are going up in the future, perhaps you might enjoy the tax-free retirement income an IUL could provide you with. Number three, are you concerned about market crashes during your retirement years? If you are, perhaps you might enjoy the 0% protective floor that an IUL provides. And number four, when you die, do you want your kids to fight over which assets to sell and which assets to keep? If the answer is no, you might want to use life insurance to provide the liquidity needed so your kids don't kill each other fighting over the assets. When I started teaching advisors and their clients how IULs work at the granular level, my result was much different than Pandora's, because when I opened the black box of IULs, not only did the evils of the life insurance industry come out, but so did hope. Sure, I exposed certain products and their design flaws, but I have also been able to uncover the truth about how a well-designed IUL can be one of the most valuable assets in legacy planning and retirement planning that exists, assuming it's designed properly and used with the right client. And before I knew anything about life insurance, my financial advisor lost me $930,000 in 3 years due to a poorly designed life insurance strategy. I'm still not certain whether or not he was aware of what he was doing when he designed that strategy. Now, if he was aware, he was commission greedy and unethical. If he was unaware, then he was irresponsible and incompetent. Either way, I was the one that got hurt financially. The purpose of this book is to teach you how these products actually work, specifically the Index Universal Life Insurance product, so that you fully understand not only the general concept, but also the granular details as well. So this is the table of contents. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 we just reviewed, dummies and wealthy people. In Chapter 3, I talk about policy charges and how charges affect the overall outcome long term. I also talk about crediting methodology and how floors and caps work, and even get into comparisons between the IUL historical performance with floors and caps versus dividend performance in whole life policies. In Chapter 5, I talk about the different ways to take policy drawdowns, whether they be withdrawals or fixed loans or participating loans. And in Chapter 6, I talk about IUL multiplier bonuses, as well as the asset-based charges that accompany those multiplier bonuses. In Chapter 7, I talk about backtesting and how our unique comparison methodology works when we explain how IULs work with clients. In Chapter 8, I talk about volatility-controlled indices and how these managed index options compare to S&P 500 index options. In Chapter 9, I talk about my own IUL and my wife's IUL and why we decided to purchase this product. And in Chapter 10, I talk a little bit about my history in this industry. So, if you'd like to pick up a copy of this book, it is available on Amazon now and several other online platforms. So, I hope you enjoyed this reading, and I also hope that when you purchase this book, you'll be able to gain that understanding that you've been looking for in regards to how IULs work. So, IULs for Dummies and Aspiring Know It Alls. And again, I hope that title does not dissuade you from learning more about IULs. It is not meant to be condescending, it is tongue in cheek humor, and I hope you have a good sense of humor about that. So, Darren Sugiyama signing off. Hope to see you guys soon.